Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elev8 Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh, and I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again with a full interview. Well, how did we get here, folks? Well, a couple weeks back, we talked about the issue of the tension between Khalistanis and India, essentially, and a lot of hate that's been coming my way anytime I talk about the issue. And I said, you know what, because you guys are coming at me and my friends and my family, well, I'm going to dig into what the heck is going on. So chapter 1, volume 1 of this, we have someone on the show with us. He is an amazing individual, an amazing man who runs an unreal YouTube channel called the Cārvāka Podcast that boasts 150,000 subscribers. We have ourselves where they talk about philosophy, public policy, current affairs, history, economics, and so much more. We have our friend, Kushal Mehra. Kushal, so happy to have you on the show and be able to talk about these really intense issues.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh. I'm looking forward to this chat. Let's see where this goes because, as they say, the proverbial shit has actually hit the roof over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to give the listeners a bit of a heads up, we are recording this on Monday, November 4th. You will be hearing this about a week later, but also we saw some issues happening in Brampton with the Hindu temple being attacked by Khalistanis, and this wasn't planned. We talked last week, you and I, to see if we can get this scheduled, and then this happened on a Sunday night, early into the wee hours of the morning, and we were just like, well, we're talking about this issue. This stinks that this is taking place, but this is almost on par and on theme for what we need to be talking about. But before we get into that, walk us through what your background is and where you're coming from and like why you're so passionate about these topics.
Well, my journey is kind of, I was born in Mumbai. I'm ethnically Punjabi, but I was born in a majority Gujarati speaking area in a majority Marathi speaking state. And I'm ethnically Punjabi. So yeah, like most Indians, I'm multilingual. We can speak multiple languages, including English and multiple Indian languages. So I came to Canada in 2001. I studied at York University. I was there for 2001 and 2002. I was done studying, then came back to India. And while I was studying here, obviously met a wonderful Canadian woman. And, we were dating at that time. And then we got married in 2007. Again, did not follow the normal course. The whole world gets married to Canadians or Americans and moves to Canada or America. I told the Canadian, let's move back to India. And she was kind enough to agree to move back with me to India. Then I was kind of visiting Canada regularly till 2014. Then, I don't know, for some odd reason, I just did not come from 2014 to 22. And then since 22, because of a personal tragedy, we've been here for 6 months. So my life is kind of weird. I stay in Canada for 6 months. So I'm like, it's not weird for Canadians. There are many Canadian snowbirds. They just end up in Phoenix, Arizona, or in Florida. I just end up in Mumbai. That's all. So when it starts snowing, I just go to Mumbai and I'm back when the snow is done. So in between all of that, I had a textile business. We had two factories back in Mumbai where we manufactured fabrics. But I was always into reading or political work, or I've been involved in multiple election campaigns back home in India, where I used to work with members of parliament or the members of the legislative assembly. And since then, I was into political commentary. And then eventually, 7 or 8 years ago is when I finally decided, okay, I came across, I love mixed martial arts. I love to watch it. So I came across a mixed martial art podcast and I love the format. So I started my own podcast. And since then, I think after COVID is when the podcast really took off. And then I kind of sold everything, all my businesses, everything, and just invested the money. And now for the last 3 years, I'm pretty much a full-time podcaster. So that's my journey.
So that's impressive. So you're all in on doing this podcast thing. It explains why the success of your show, which is unreal. And that's kind of how we connected. You came across one of my clips and you talked about it on your show. And eventually it's just through friends of friends and connections, we got connected and be able to have this conversation, which I'm very grateful to have you on because, I think this is an awesome opportunity because we are essentially just cross-pollinating our audiences, and our audiences based in Canada, just regular old Canadians who've been here forever, and trying to understand what's happening with the clash of cultures that is happening currently in the past handful of years. And some of our listeners are just like, what is happening? And almost scared to even ask the questions because they'll be labeled with whatever label they'll be given. And I felt like this is an opportunity to start bringing people onto the show who are experts in these ideas and who have experienced these things. So when it comes to the tensions between Khalistanis and Hindus, or Khalistanis and Indians, however you want to kind of shape that or frame that, I know it's a long storied history, but if you can sum it up in 2 minutes, where is that tension? How did that tension start, and where is it coming from?
See, Khalistan as a movement was not really picking up steam as far as India is concerned any time until certain politicians in India, for petty political gains, started promoting a particular person in India whose name was Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. He was basically, he used to go around in rural Punjab preaching and, kind of dealing with drug related issues, basically kind of running rehab clinics. But he had radical views at that time. And then the then Prime Minister of India, on the advice of certain politicians in Punjab, started promoting him. And initially, honestly, he did not even get a lot of traction, even in Indian Punjab. But eventually, through the machinations of the political class, he really, became a force of nature. And then eventually someone who even the Indian political class could not control. And that led to a lot of violence in India. Probably, any Punjabi you talk to, whether they are living in Punjab or outside Punjab, would not, you will not meet us. It will be hard to find a Punjabi who will not have an extended family member or a friend who was not kidnapped or killed during the horrific years in Punjab from the mid 80s to the mid 90s at that time. So at that time, there was a little bit of a sentiment, but, a lot of people died in Punjab at that time, Hindus, Sikh, Muslims, all of them. And the key word here is not, Khalistan is not Sikh militancy. Khalistan is militancy. It is Hindus and Sikh people together versus Khalistan. And when we were going back and forth, I did share a lot of articles with you from the archives, if you remember, from India Today at that time in the 80s and the 90s, and how, if you would go through them, the Khalistanis behaved in India, how they would pick on people. They would have dress codes all over Punjab. Hindi as a language was banned in Punjab, and many other things were done in Punjab at that time. If a Sikh person who, it's very normal for Hindu and Sikh people to marry each other. It's a very normal thing. It even happens in Canada today. Like, it's very normal. It's we marry across our faiths because there is barely any difference. So we are very common. Like, even over here, the temple that got attacked yesterday, right? That temple, half of the devotees are Sikh people. So they go to the temple. So it's so normal. But this movement then obviously was dealt with in India through force, at times unfair and unnecessary, in my view. I would recommend 2 great books if you want to understand the Khalistan movement in totality, in detail. There is something called the Khalistan Conspiracy. It was written by a former RNAW officer. He is the Indian version. RNAW is the Indian version of CSIS. And he has written a book called the Khalistan Conspiracy. His name is GBS Sidhu, Sidhu. And obviously, the other book I would recommend is of a great Canadian journalist who has studied Khalistan and its development and movement outside India, which is Terry Milevsky, who used to work for CBC for the longest time. He retired at the CBC. And I think his book is called Blood for Blood. So Khalistan, in its essence, was pretty much done in the mid 90s in India. But what happened is, when the police started cracking down, the Punjab police started cracking down on Khalistani militancy in India, a lot of these militants started leaving India. Many of them were Talvinder Singh Parmar and Ripudaman Singh Malik and many other these criminals. They would come to Western countries. Some of them went to the United Kingdom, but the largest chunk of them were in Canada. And for some odd reason, from the mid 80s, early 80s to now, Canada has always given shelter to this small but extremely violent and radicalized group inside the Indian community. And India keeps on telling them. So I'll give you an example. The worst terrorist attack in the history of Canada, where the maximum number of people who died were Canadian passport holders, was the Air India bombing, which I don't know, for some odd reason, no Canadian talks about. Like, there is no seriousness in Canada. And I distinctly remember when this happened, any normal world condition would be the prime minister of the other country calls the Canadian prime minister and gives their condolences. But when the Air India bombing happened, the Canadian prime minister called the Indian prime minister and gave condolences. I was like, no, these are Canadian citizens who have passed away. Yes, there were 50 Indian passport holders, but the vast majority of those people were Canadians. So why is the Canadian prime minister calling the Indian prime minister and giving condolences? So I think that's in many ways shows the attitude of how Canada has looked at this issue. It has always been, oh, these brown people are fighting amongst each other. And which is why they have never solved it in its root. If you look at Terry Milewski's book, where he shares in detail how the RCMP botched up the entire Air India bombing investigation. What role did CSIS play in that? And then kudos to Prime Minister Harper. It's only under Prime Minister Harper that, we had a proper commission under a judge that actually gave some justice to the victims. Now look at the irony. Talvinder Singh Parmar, the key person involved in the Air India bombing, who is eulogized in Gurdwaras in Canada, how did he die? He went to Pakistan from Canada. From Pakistan, he entered India, where the Indian forces shot him dead. So, these days, there is a lot of talk of foreign interference in Canada. Oh, Indians are sending XYZ people. Now, we will see where the evidence takes us. But here is an actual evidence of a person coming from Canada. He, for all walks of, for all purposes, is Canadian now because Canada has given him shelter. He comes to India to kill Indians. But that's not foreign interference. So this is where the Khalistan movement is. Khalistan movement, for some odd reason, has become... I say this someone who cares for Canada. It's not like I'm anti-Canada. I genuinely care for the country. I care for India. I care for Canada, both. And some of us who have been shouting and screaming about this, a former premier of British Columbia, Ujjal Dosanjh, a great Canadian politician, when he raised his voice in the 80s against extremism inside his own community, people have to realize Ujjal Dosanjh is a Sikh. He was raising his voice. They beat him up, black and blue. Then a great Canadian journalist, Balraj Deol, he ran a Canadian Punjabi weekly called Khabarnama for 21 years. Just a few months after Ujjal Dosanjh was attacked, he was attacked. He was almost dead. Luckily, somebody found him and they took him to a hospital. And there has been a series of, journalists like Tara Singh Hare were shot dead. He could not survive. Recently in Calgary, the journalist Rishi Nagar did not even use the words Khalistan. He just talked about extortion. He was attacked. So Khalistanis worked in two strategies, right? If it's a brown guy, intimidate physically. If it's a white guy, try to sue them. So this in a nutshell is Canada and Khalistan and its connection from the history. I'm sorry I took a long time.
No, that's fantastic. And that's actually really helpful to kind of what you started with, how it started in India and then bringing it here to Canada and how it's affecting us. I think that was fantastic the way you did it. And the one thing you mentioned, which I really appreciated, was the fact that white Canadians tend to look at this as the brown people fighting amongst each other. And admittedly, people that I talk to, that's kind of how they view it because they're just uneducated and ignorant of like what the situation is and what's actually happening. So my question to you is, why do you think, if this has been going on significantly, at least a significant tension since the 80s, Why has it been going on for so long without it being addressed by Canadian officials, do you think?
I know it sounds conspiratorial, but I think in the beginning it was a good geopolitical tool against India. I genuinely believe. See, you have to look at the history of India. India was very close to Russia, and the Americans. I don't mean to say this offensively to Canadians, but listen, Canadian foreign policy is pretty much affected by what Americans want them to do. I mean, I'm not trying to put Canadians down, but that's just a fact of life, and I think Canadians should accept these things in terms of geopolitics. I think a lot of it initially was driven by geopolitics, that we need a bulwark to deal with the Indians in that sense because they were very close to the Russians. Things started changing after the 90s, where India liberalized and then the Americans could invest in India. Then, by then, it was too late. By then, what has happened is the zombification of the Canadian diaspora was far gone. Today, the Khalistan movement is actually diluted in Canada. And people may not believe me because right now there are some really horrifying immigrants that are coming from Punjab to Canada, and I'll be the first one who will say deport them all back to India before somebody thinks I would be defensive. No, deport them all back to India. But the reason Khalistan keeps getting diluted in Canada is because of the people from Punjab that come over here. Because Indian Punjabis, irrespective of whether they are Hindu or Sikh, they're not radicalized. So when they come over here, the radicalization quotient actually drops. The real radicalism, as far as Khalistanis are concerned, is actually now in the second generation and the third generation over here, because they kept on going to these zombie gurdwaras. See, gurdwaras in India are very different. And I know people find it so hard. Well, how different can it be? It's a temple here, it's a temple there. No, we don't do crazy things over there. Y'all do crazy things over here. It's I don't know how else to say this. Like, for a Punjabi, the Gurdwara, whether Hindu or Sikh, is an integral part of their life. Everybody goes. Even I go. But in India, over here, I have not stepped foot in a Gurdwara since I've lived here. And I can say this with full authority, I will not go to one until and unless I know it's a non-Khalistani Gurdwara. So, so how did they screw the system over is first, so you remember, initially they would lose Gurdwara elections, these Khalistanis. Then they realized to win the Gurdwara elections, they started beating the innocent pro-Canada, pro-India Sikh up. Now, listen, these people are doing businesses, have a job. They're not going to go indulge in fist fights in Gurdwaras. Again, typical attitude of the Western, political class was, brown people problem. Let these idiots fight. And they just let them fight. And the Khalistanis kept on taking over one after the other Gurdwara. So all the you should listen to the stories of Ujjal Dosanjh, how he says the Sari Gurdwara, which was non-Khalistani, and Ujjal used to defend the secular Sikh community of that area, and how they lost it and how the Khalistanis took over. So once the Khalistanis have the Gurdwara, then the radicalism starts. And everything you see over here stems from the Gurdwara. Like, Josh, you know how much it pains me when I say this, but I have met so many members of the Sikh community, and off the record tell me, we don't send our kids to Gurdwaras anymore. And I'm like, okay, why? They're like, listen, they go in as human beings, they come out as zombies. We just don't want our kids to be radicalized. And the Canadian state now is willfully turning a blind eye for political reasons, because you guys are a very sparsely populated country. You're still, 40 million now, even after the immigration explosion in the last decade. It's just 10 million has been added to the population. Like, I'm from India, we have 1.5 billion. So, it's kind of not comparable, the numbers. So I think it's still nothing. So the electoral loss or win is what? If cutting across all ridings, best case scenario, 10,000, worst case scenario, 500,000, 2,000. Now ask yourself, Josh, there are 30 ridings cutting across urban Canada and rural Canada where the Indo-Canadian vote matters a lot. Now, if you have a group of radicalized people who have a section of 500 votes in every riding. And they go and show the political class that, listen, if you don't do what we say, we will switch the vote. What do you think is going to happen in this country? This is what is happening to you guys. That's your answer.
Very interesting. So there's just a lot of political influence that is happening within these communities.
Oh my goodness. It's crazy.
And it's being imposed on our political class here in Canada, is what I'm understanding you saying.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, I did this podcast with Balraj Dale, the Canadian journalist. He's a Sikh too. And he explained how the Canadian system is systematically rigged by the Khalistanis. Now, I was appalled when I found out that Liberals and NDPs don't even need you to be a landed immigrant to vote in a primary.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this country is bonkers to allow that.
Thank you. Preach it. Yep.
I am a landed immigrant in Canada. I want to say this on the record. I should not be allowed to vote in any primary. Whether Conservative, whether Liberal, or whether NDP. Only Canadian passport holders should decide the fate of Canada. This is how it should be. But this country, for some odd reason, and I think it was in the pre-hearing of what was the commission called? The Hogue Commission recently?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
When the honorable prime minister, or the not so honorable prime minister of Canada, goes ahead and says, well, no, we should let everyone vote. What is this, like a picnic? I mean, I don't know. What are we going for, a picnic where, hey, let's go and vote? Why? Because we want to influence a G7 country, and we want to decide. So understand why these people only hear a certain voice when they are inside the federal parliament or the provincial parliament or the council. Your primaries are rigged. So even if they lose the election, but the candidate is always a Khalistani, the probabilities of a candidate being a good Sikh is very low, because the Khalistanis rig the primaries. How do they rig the primaries? I know it for a fact. Pizzas are offered. You give $50, $100, put them in a bus. These students, they're poor, right? They're struggling over here. So it's so easy to rig this primary system, and almost all candidates are done like this. Now, you might say, well, then the Conservatives should not have Khalistanis. Lo and behold, yes, it's slightly harder to become a Khalistani in a Conservative party, but even they rig it. So how does that happen? I've seen all of this with my own eyes, and anybody can look up my podcast. I've been screaming about this for 3 years. And Balraj Dale about this for 20 years, by the way. So let's say, the $15 membership of the Conservative Party. So let's say I'm a Khalistani. I am a Khalistani in one riding. I go to houses in those ridings and I say, buy my membership. They're like, I'm not wasting $15. I'll give you cash, $15. You use your card and buy my membership. So basically it costs them nothing. They're like, okay, I'll do you a favor. The innocent person doesn't know that Khalistani is basically taking him or her for a ride. And that's how the Conservatives are rigged. So basically, Khalistanis are like, they are like gravity on planet Earth. It's everywhere. They are everywhere in your system. So now when you have every time the probability of a candidate, listen, look up the candidates. We don't need to take any names. Look up the candidates, look at their tweets, and you can, for certain, for example, we had this tragedy at the Hindu Sabha Mandir, right? Yesterday.
Yep.
In the entire Canadian Parliament, only 2 members of Parliament, one Chandra Arya, used the word Khalistan, and one was Kevin Wong, a member of Parliament from Toronto.
Who's
right?
Independent. Yeah.
Yeah, he's independent.
Yeah.
Other than these two and one MPP from Toronto, I think she's from Toronto, Goldie Gamari.
Yep. She's awesome.
Nobody, I repeat, nobody even used the word Khalistan. What the hell? Worst case scenario. First of all Sikhs are not Khalistani. Out of the 800,000 strong Sikh community in Canada, at worst, 100,000 to 150,000 are Khalistani or Khalistani adjacent. But why are there so many Khalistanis in your parliament? You should, I should not be answering these things. Actually, I should be asking you, why the hell is this happening in Canada?
No, these are honestly, you're putting out some really good questions. And because I think this goes back to a conversation we we're having offline. And so I'll actually answer your question. Is we've put such a precedent and focus on diversity, and and I will be very blunt, and this is gonna be a very crass answer, and I will put it out there. But the minute Trudeau had multiple people with quote unquote turbans on, is how we would view it. It's like, oh wow, we got some great multiculturalism. And conservatives was like, we need that too. They don't know the backgrounds, they don't know the cultural history, they don't know anything. They're just like, we just need people who look like that. And I think that's kind of where a lot of this comes from. And I think it was ready and bred for something like this that could happen. But I could be wrong. I could also just be completely off my rocker and incorrect on that. That's kind of what I see happening here, if that makes sense.
No, I do understand this because in the 1970s, from whatever little I've studied in Canadian political history, multiculturalism was an official state policy. Most people don't realize that actually Canada invented multiculturalism as a political philosophy. They invented it. They made it part of the system. And then in 2017, if I remember correctly, I read an interview of the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, where he said, we are a post-national state. I don't even know what that means. I think he's a word salad generator.
Yeah, that's a real term, and I think I know exactly the interview you're talking about. Where that is, from my understanding, that's a globalist understanding of what a nation is, post-nationalist, meaning that we're not focused on nation first. We are just kind of a mosaic for all types of cultures to be here without anything that really holds them together aside from the land that they stand on.
Yeah, and I find it grossly offensive as someone who lives 6 months in India, 6 months in Canada. If I am here, I try to adjust as much as I can into the Canadian fabric. Like, in fact, I would ask silly questions like, which team am I supposed to support in hockey? And somebody said Maple Leafs. And then I kept on looking up and they keep losing. And I was swearing at that friend of mine. I was like, why did you tell me to support this team? They never win. I was like, you basically gave me the worst team. Were you playing a joke on me? Like, they keep losing all the time, these morons. And like, I was so angry at my friend. I was like, no, that's not fair. I'm going to find a team that wins now. So it's irritating. And I'll give you another example. Recently, I think it was Young and Dundas during Diwali a couple of days ago. Who are these morons bursting firecrackers? I was the first person to say, F all these people. Put them in a bus, take them to the airport, send them back to India. If they want to, intimidate people like this in Canada, send them back to India. I don't give a shit. I don't care. And they give all the other normal, decent Indians a bad name. I don't care. Send them all back to India. I don't give a damn. But here's the thing. Your politicians will send me back to India. Me, the person who would actually add value, who would actually hire people over here, who would end up paying more taxes in Canada. If I was to stay here, they would send me back. They would deport me, but they will keep all these muppets over here so that they can act like they're low-level thugs who can intimidate innocent Canadians. It is, and when I say intimidate innocent Canadians, I don't mean white people, even people like me. People who just want to follow the law, do the normal thing. This philosophy is actively promoted in Canada. Like, I ask my friends, what is it to be a Canadian? It's not like I have white friends, brown friends, Chinese friends. I have all kinds of friends over here. And I ask them, if I ask my American friends, they will tell me First Amendment, the Bill of Rights, blah, 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 blah. Other than my friend Daniel Boardman, I've not had one person who has given me an answer what it is to be a Canadian. Nobody gives me an answer. And Daniel Boardman is a Jew.
Gosh. Yeah. You bring up some very, very valid points. And these are the conversation we've had on our show too. Like, what does it mean to be Canadian? We can't even give a real answer for it because it has been so washed away of like the meaning of it. And the question I'll bring back to it again, the issue that happened in Brampton here on November 3rd was a brutal attack on Hindus at a temple. And there was very little, at least initial reporting on it. Globe and Mail had an article that was behind a paywall. CBC reported on it and just called it a protest. So what do you think it is? I mean, obviously we've talked about how, from your perspective, there's clearly been compromise at the political level. Do you think that compromise at the political level has now extended to our media as well when it comes to this specific issue of them reporting on something in such a soft manner?
Well, you have to ask yourself this question. There's this character, Gurpatwan Singh Pannu, who lives in a location in America. Every time he issues a threat, it's always in Punjabi because white people will not understand it. It works like magic, right? All the threats to Indians and Hindus specifically. See, people don't understand this attack that happened outside two temples, right? One in Brampton, Ontario, one in Surrey, British Columbia.
Yeah.
Just a few hours before that, Gurpatwan Singh Pannu made a video in Punjabi where he said, well, Hindus, if you celebrate Diwali, all the Khalistani Sikh members should go and first tell them with folded hands, please don't do this. As if, who the hell are you to tell us what to do? If they don't listen, then you use Khalsa style. Now, see, this is the wiggle room he leaves. So Khalsa style, we mean, everybody knows what he's saying. It's a dog whistle to act violently. And then look what has happened now. And this is a pattern now. And this guy goes on CBC, your state broadcaster in Canada, and CTV, a private, but one of the giants in Canada. They're talking to him and they're calling him a Sikh activist. If he's the activist, then I'm the Incredible Hulk and Iron Man combined. Gurpatwan Singh Pannu is an activist, and he says in that interview, to the recent interview in CBC, I've been working with the Prime Minister's office for 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Which is literally crazy to me. When I realized who this man was and what he's done, and he's just openly working with our government, I was like, there's no one else got questions about this. I remember when I initially covered it, I kind of messed up a little bit my wording on terms of his background, and I made sure to correct it. But just knowing the idea that our government is working with someone that another government who is supposed to be one of our allies views as a terrorist should be of concern to Canadians. And yet we kind of treat him as you said, as an activist. CTV's interviewing him, CBC's interviewing him, giving him a platform. That's wild to me.
It hurts as someone who actually genuinely cares for Canada. I actually had the option of moving to America and Canada both when I could, because I have family in America too, so I could actually move to America. I chose Canada by choice because I'm one of those people who actually loves this country. I have a lot of fondness for Canada, and it hurts me to see Canada becoming what it is due to mass immigration, due to letting extremist elements. Can we have one weekend in this country where either Khalistanis or some Palestinian protest is not going to happen? Can we have one weekend in this country? Like, I seriously, what happened to those days when Canada beat America for the Olympic gold medal, and we had crazy people jumping on the streets yelling normal things?
Right. Yeah.
What happened to that Canada? What happened to that sentiment of Canada? Like, I want that. Listen, okay, you want to protest in favor of Palestine, free speech. I understand all of that, but for goodness sake, like every freaking weekend, and you know what? Every time there's like, but the Hindus do this. Listen, let us do a statistical analysis of the innocent Hindu Sikh community and the Jewish community too of Canada. How many times have they gone outside religious places of any faith and protested, intimidated? They're only defending themselves. Like, if you can't go to a synagogue and pray where somebody's going to come and shoot you, what is the point? Like, when I wrote a letter to Canadian politicians, my first line was, there were more than 100 churches that are burnt in Canada. What the hell are you people doing? Like, I'm not supposed to talk about it. 100 churches are burnt in Canada. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Am I a Christian? No. I don't expect a Christian to become a Hindu. No. I don't expect a Christian to like idolatry. But what happened to the idea of Canada where
We care for each other. I don't understand, the entire liberal NDP. And now I'm sorry to say, as much as I have a soft corner for the Conservative Party of Canada, because I am a conservative fiscally, and in many ways I lean conservative, but the entire Canadian political class honestly has cheated Canadians.
And I expected more from Pierre Poilievre, but looking at his behavior too, like, notice he was late on the immigration bus too. He was not saying anything on immigration until it became normal for everybody else. It's almost as if in Canada, if a majority of the white people are waiting for brown guy to say, this sucks.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, brown guy has said immigration sucks. Now immigration sucks. It's as if, we need brown certification for everything. Why? If it makes sense, if it's not racist, if it's based on facts, then just say it. Like when last time there were a bunch of people who were unnecessarily attacking the Hanuman Murti, the statue in the Hindu Sabha Mandir. I called them out for their racism. I'm like, listen, it's on private property. You're a bad conservative if you don't understand the concept of private property. Then you're not a conservative. You're just, I don't know what you are. You're a communist who thinks you're conservative, because then you don't understand the concept of private property. I don't expect you to respect it as a faith, but I expect you to be a good conservative. And conservatism, the fundamental of conservatism is private property rights. And there we, but it doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to get anybody from Punjab and they can just intimidate people at Young and Dundas and they can just do whatever they want to do. No, both suck. And I'm sick and tired of, every time as a brown man, I have to tell my white friends, like, I'll give you a story why I am so driven. I'm going to give you 2 stories. I say this with every show I go to. 3 years ago, in my first ever talk in Toronto, Canada, when I formally moved here, there were 2 young Hindu girls who came to me, and, then I asked their father, can I talk to your daughters? They want to talk to me. And when he gave me permission, I sat down with the 2 young girls. I think one was 8 or 9. The other one was like 6 or 7. And they said, we are so scared to go to school because people make fun of us because we're Hindus. That really broke my heart. Then last year, it was for Diwali dinner. My wife's best friend is a white woman. Now, they've been friends since high school. They're very close. We're having this common discussion. And I was the one who said, gosh, there are so many Indians here. I was the one who said that. Not her. I did.
Yeah.
And her daughter, who I love a lot, gets up. She goes across the table, whispers something in mommy's ears. Mommy says, it's okay, you can say that. You know what the answer was? Yes. What has the Canadian system done to school children? That a Hindu girl is scared for being Hindu, a white girl is scared of being white. That is when I told my wife, I clearly remember our drive back home, and I told my wife, I will fight for every child in Canada. And at that time I said, these bastards, when I meant these bastards, I meant the politicians of Canada. These bastards have betrayed our children. And when I say our children, white folks, black folks, brown folks, I don't give a shit what color of your skin is. If we don't fight for these children, these people are going to destroy our children. And that's my problem with the fundamental disease that Canada has is, what are we doing here? Like, are we crazy that a 9-year-old child thinks I'm going to be offended because she says, yes, there are many Indians. There are many Indians. Even I think there are too many Indians, and I am Indian.
So here's the thing, Kushal. I really appreciate your candor and your bluntness. I think this is something people, especially white people here in Canada, need to hear, because identity politics has been festering on the surface for a better part of about 15 years now. Trudeau really brought it in full throttle, to the point where everyone's been divided on race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, you name it. And people are afraid to speak to what their eyes see. That's why we're seeing such a division, and things are so hot down south of the border in this current in this election process and the campaign, is because one side's saying that what you're seeing is not there, and the other side's like saying full throttle, yes, what you're seeing is all there, and people are kind of torn that way. In Canada, our nature has been preyed upon by bad actors. Our nature is to be unassuming, to see the best in people, want to bring all the outsiders in, and bring them into the culture that we call Canada. But now we've had people that have come in who have taken advantage of that. And now we, white Canadians specifically, don't feel comfortable calling out what they are seeing. And I want to bring an issue back to what you said about Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, because you brought this up on your social media just recently, where you posted 4 different MPs, I believe it was. It was Arpan Khanna, Jasraj Singh Halan, and Tim Uppal, who you believe had a hand in Pierre Poilievre canceling his celebrations and meeting up with Hindus for Diwali.
Yes. So can I give you the entire historical, because it's very important to explain the history of this event.
Yeah.
This is a 23-year-old tradition. It was started by an MP, Deepak Oberoi. He was a pillar of the Canadian Indian community. You can go and ask Indo-Canadians and they will sing praises of Deepak Oberoi. He used to celebrate the Diwali on the Hill. After he passed away, the Oberoi Foundation and Todd Doherty, they used to continue this. And it was a very normal thing. And then one day this year, on the 18th of October, they get an email, the organization that would help them, saying this event is cancelled. Okay. Now, I'm not going to take names here because these are my sources in the Conservative Party. I don't want to do that as an honest person who reports on these things. I should protect my sources. So I called some of them. I was like, why are we canceling Diwali? They're like, just don't say anything right now. We're fixing it. I was like, okay. Mum's the word. I'll not say a word. I'll keep my honest assessment here. So I don't say anything. And then on the 29th, I was told, wait for 2 days. I waited for a week. I waited for a week. And then the letter came out. And then, listen, I don't think so. These people realize that, first of all, Hindus did not ask for this function. Let's be very clear. These guys called the Hindus. It's been going on for 23 years because politicians like to, entertain people, because these people end up voting for them. This is, you may call it identity politics, but it happens with everyone. It's like, a politician calling someone to celebrate Christmas. Listen, in a multicultural, diverse society, you're going to have to pander to everyone, whether you like it or not. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I understand, okay, this is politics, okay, whatever. Do I like it? No, I would not go to these things personally. Like, I'd rather spend Christmas and Diwali with my family. Like, right. Put it this way, than with a politician taking fake selfies. Yeah. That's my idea. So they cancel it, then they get shit for it. Now they don't know what to do. So then they try to do this jugglery where they tweet out, no, we were just relocating it. We never canceled it. That letter is a falsehood. Then I had to expose them. And because I had the screenshot of that freaking email from Todd Doherty's office all the while. It was out of sheer decency for my friends in the Conservative Party that I was not exposing them. Then I exposed them. Then they're like, oh shit, now the email is out. Now they're redoing it on the 5th. It's tomorrow. It's a dinky ass thing. Nobody from our community in GTA is going.
Wow.
Nobody's going because they felt so hurt and insulted. And you know what hurts me even more? They did not do it with the Deepak Oberoi Foundation. The Deepak Oberoi Foundation now ends up doing it with a Liberal MP, Chandra Arya. Josh, the conclusion is the Liberals eventually outmaneuvered the Conservatives. They basically created this bullshit campaign. Oh, look at this guy. He was with the Indian High Commissioner. Pierre Poilievre is an Indian agent. Huh? There are photos of Trudeau with the same Indian High Commissioner. There are photos of every single politician with the Indian High Commissioner. He was the Indian High Commissioner. I don't know what Pierre and his advisors were thinking. The inside story that I hear is, and I'm quoting verbatim what I was told by my sources. The OLO went to Arpan because Arpan is the national chair and some other people. I don't know. Allegedly, this is what I have been told. Okay. I don't know. I haven't no evidence. So I can only tell you what have been told allegedly. And these people just said, there's too much heat right now about the whole India interference thing. Let's just cancel it. And they have messed it all up. They have opened the
I was kind of half joking with my friend. I was like, you never cancel a dinner for Indians. Indians take it personally.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you never cancel a dinner. They take it personally. And they have, I have heard voice notes. If I ever meet you in person, I'll play the voice note for you. I cannot forward it.
Right.
People sending direct voice notes to none other than Pierre Poilievre.
Oh, wow.
Telling, my dear brother Pierre, please don't do this. This will be a disaster for us. These are Indo-Canadian conservatives. These are hardcore conservatives who care for the party. They will take a bullet for the party. They will go on the ground, raise funds for the party, get votes for the party. They're telling Pierre, what the hell are you doing? Don't do this. It's going to be a disaster. And they've just fallen from one hole to the other, and they keep digging an even bigger hole. And I don't know how they're come out. And this was the perfect opportunity, right? You have a temple that is attacked.
Yep.
The entire Conservative Party. Imagine, even in this, the Liberals outmaneuver them because the one Liberal MP, Chandra Arya, see, like it or not, Chandra Arya is a Liberal MP. The Liberal MP uses the word Khalistan. All the Conservatives had to do was, okay, Tim cannot do it. Tim has Khalistani connections. Arpan cannot do it. He allegedly has Khalistani connections. Jasraj has Khalistani connections. The entire freaking Conservative Parliament, they must have had one backbencher MP, who doesn't matter.
Right.
But he could have been sacrificed. Is your politics so silly? All you had to do. And even in this incident, they got outmaneuvered. In the Indian community, the most conservative of them is the Gujarati Indian community. Today, we had the Gujarati Association writing a letter to Pierre Poilievre. What has the Conservative Party done? And it hurts me is because this was a giant vote bank ready to be taken for the Conservatives, the Hindu vote bank. They would have willingly gone to the Conservatives because they feel so frustrated with the Liberals and the NDP. Mark my words, they're still not going to vote Liberal and NDP. They're still not going to vote. But now they may not vote for Pierre Poilievre.
Right. They just won't show up.
Yeah, they won't show up. And that's what hurts me. Because honestly, I wanted Pierre to win. I never hide my politics. I never hide it. Like even on my podcast, I openly say I voted for Modi in India. I've never hidden it because I feel it should be transparent. I should. If I was in Canada, I would have been eligible to vote in Canada. I would have been a Conservative. I just want to put it on record so that people should not think I'm a Liberal or NDP. NDP I can never be. I mean, I hate Jagmeet Singh with a passion, but if in Canada, if I'm allowed to vote, I would have voted Conservative. But now, after what they have done and studying the Conservative Party politics and how the Khalistanis actually control them too, I don't know if I can vote for this Conservative Party.
See, these are some pretty damning words, and I appreciate your openness and your frankness on this. And it is intriguing to hear that even, within the you said the Indo-Hindu community, they're speaking out, sending voice notes to Pierre himself, like, what are you doing? And they kind of said, they fumbled the ball, essentially, is what I understand. And you don't see a whole lot of hope for the political class in general. You had hope for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, and now after a lot of these different things and the people that are around him, you're now losing faith in them being able to represent all Canadians of all communities at this point, that they won't be hampered or influenced by a specific group. You talked there at the end. We hit every political party at this point. Hit the Liberals. We've hit the Conservatives. You shared there about your distrust in not really liking much of Jagmeet Singh. Why is that? What about him is really gets your goat?
Well, he's a Khalistani. I mean, he's been seen with Shamsher Singh, his old videos from 2017, 2018. Shamsher Singh has been on record. He was recorded by an Indian media house in a sting operation where he openly calls for attacking members of the Indian community. And it's a very simple thing. Go to Jagmeet Singh just today. He was asked to comment on Khalistan and see the word salad that he gave as an answer just today.
Yeah,
as we are recording this. So Jagmeet is a Khalistani. I mean, he was interviewed by Terry Milevsky, And Terry asked him to clarify, does he condemn the attackers of the Air India bombing? And he refused to do that. And then later on, because of the pressure, he had to change. But listen, Jagmeet is a Khalistani. I know it for a fact. And we're Punjabi. We know our community. We understand the inner machinations. So Jagmeet is a mortal danger to Canada. People don't understand. This guy is not good for Canada. And if there was a Hindu who was a Khalistani, I would say even he's a mortal danger to Canada. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Khalistan is an idea because, see, Khalistan is never happening in India. It's not going to happen in India. If it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen over here.
Right.
And
sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, because the political class of Canada actively, allows them to do whatever they want to do. And it has come to a point where you have to believe this. The Hindu community is frustrated over here. Frustrated till the extent of being angry over here. And I am not supporting some of the acts that the Hindu community has done. Like even today, as we're recording right now, I've seen some videos of, unnecessary altercations with the police where they are going on arguing. It's not on. But why did it have to come to this? Why do you keep letting these Khalistanis heckle the Hindus? Like, when you have videos like Hindu, Indian, go back to India. I mean, what the hell? I'm a tax-paying person, man. I don't break any law. I follow everything to the T. The Hindu community of Canada has the lowest crime rate of all communities in Canada. Literally. My source is Stats Canada. That's my source. Stats Canada. Hindus are literally at the bottommost of the incarcerations. They don't commit crimes. They are probably, I don't know if they are the richest or after the Chinese community, they are the richest in Canada, but they're very rich. They are the richest in America. They are literally are the richest in America. They are your doctors. They are your lawyers. They are your investment bankers. They are your tech geeks. They are not going to diploma mills in Brampton. Right. They don't go to diploma mills in Brampton. They are highly skilled. Yes, some of them might be. There will be, statistically insignificant miscreants in every community. And I would say that same for the majority Sikh community of Canada. These are really hardworking people. But the point is that for some odd reason, like even Ujjal Dosanjh, for the National Post to quote Ujjal Dosanjh, where he literally calls Trudeau an imbecile, that was scathing. And Ujjal Dosanjh is no conservative.
Right.
Ujjal Dosanjh is, very much leaning on the left. And when somebody from the left is criticizing the entire political system, see, you have to understand that if we, as fellow Canadians, right, if we don't work together, and I want to insist this again, if you find a Hindu who does something wrong, we oppose them. If you find a Christian who does something wrong, we oppose them. This is about either we are a society that was based on a dream of rule of law, or we're not. Then let's just make it the Wild West then.
In some ways, it's kind of how it's feeling, where there's different rules for different groups of people at this point, and it essentially is in the name of equity, essentially. But there is no fairness under the law at this point. If you are of a certain group and you do X, Y, and Z, then you may not be prosecuted. Versus if you are a member of this particular group. We know as Canadians, we view Jagmeet Singh in a specific way in terms of why he keeps bolstering up this Canadian or this Liberal government. From your perspective and your political persuasion and the culture and background that you come from, why do you think Jagmeet keeps Trudeau in power?
Isn't he due for his pension in February?
That's what a lot of us think as a part of it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he is pension Singh too. So he's sellout Singh, his pension Singh. I don't know how many. It's like look at the control of the Khalistanis. Let's study the sellout Singh saga, right? Pierre kept on calling him sellout Singh until somebody whispered in his ear, "Hey, we might lose the Sikh vote if we say sellout Singh." And then suddenly sellout Singh becomes sellout Jagmeet Singh. I mean, come on, get real. It's so ridiculous. They just cave in all the time. Like sellout, I have a F Trudeau bumper sticker.
You do not?
Yeah, I do.
Oh gosh. You must get people really confused seeing you at lights, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I don't give a shit. I don't like Trudeau. The funniest thing was my father-in-law's we had gone to a garage where we usually go to, and I don't know, he was a conservative, obviously. And I don't know, my father-in-law was, telling him, hey, my son-in-law, meet him. I was like, he's the first question. He's like, who do you vote for? I was like, look at my bumper sticker. He's like, okay, now you can go inside. He was hardcore conservative. It was very funny. But like, look at the British Columbia elections.
Oh,
Who do you think voted for the conservatives? It was the Indians. It was the minorities that voted for the conservatives. White people ended up voting the damn NDP in.
it's true.
Like, how can you blame us? We voted for the one party that wants to save Canada, and the white people go against their own interests. Like, how do you blame us for that? Like, do you think the upcoming election a lot? Like, which is why I kept telling Pierre, like, I keep messaging everybody in the Conservative Party. Like, I write emails to them. Have you gone bonkers? You have a community that historically is ready to be voting for you now. Learn from Donald Trump. Look at how he timed his email for the Hindu community in America just before the elections. He wrote the long ass message, and I can guarantee you he's going to move at least 10 to 15% Hindus to him. It's all about timing. Or I hope when the election comes, Pierre changes his tune. If Pierre does not have to insult anyone. All he has to do is, we oppose Khalistani extremism. I can guarantee you Pierre will get 95% of the Hindu vote. It's as simple as that. But somebody is advising him that if we use the word Khalistan, we might use the Sikh word, which means Pierre thinks all Sikh members are Khalistani, and that is the most condescending thing to think about the Sikh community of Canada. The problem is, because the moment you assume using Khalistan means I lose the Sikh community, it means you think all Canadian Sikhs are radicalized. Imagine how insulting that is to the honest Canadian Sikh.
Yeah. Or in some ways, like, it also comes from ignorance as well. Like, I've learned a lot from just this conversation with you, and leading up to this conversation, you and I talked last week. I loved being able to get in touch with you. I loved how quick you were to answer my texts, and what I did appreciate was the fact that you're just like, I asked for you to come on the show, and you're just like, where and when? Like, I could go tomorrow if you wanted. Like, you were all in, and that was something I really appreciated. But I was like, give me a week. I need some time to really kind of wrap my head around the history and what's happening here. Because I have admittedly been super ignorant to the culture and ignorant to the issues happening around, that I really needed to educate myself on it. I'm glad I did. And I can see, I think Pierre Poilievre is a very smart guy, smarter than me. But if what you're saying is true, then yeah, like, he's just ignorant to the cultures and religions, is my understanding.
Yeah, and it's not just that. I think Khalistan is no longer a risk for Indian security. Khalistan is a risk to Canadian security. And I don't know why we as people, whether we are passport holders or permanent residents like me, why don't we care for Canadian security anymore? If we love Canada, we have to oppose Khalistan. It's as simple as that. If we love Canada, that I repeat, if we support Khalistan, I don't think we love Canada. There is no confusion in my head. If we love Canada, we have to oppose mass immigration. If we love Canada, we have to stop these insane taxes.
Yeah.
It's very simple for me. These are not complicated things. Because look at what has happened now. Today, the CBC has reported there was a off-duty cop, who was part of the Khalistani protests. Listen, how scary is that? The CBC reported that.
Wow.
You have Khalistanis in your police, even in Surrey, even in the Peel police. Then the Indian government has asked the Canadian government to extradite a border security officer.
I saw
Allegedly, that is a Khalistani. So they're literally planted everywhere. I can guarantee you, do this experiment someday. Write to the Conservative Party as, why are you guys not? If you're a white Canadian who's going to watch this, write to the Conservative Party and say, why don't you guys use the word Khalistani extremism, and see how quickly that letter gets leaked.
Oh.
That letter gets leaked.
And ask yourself, how many Khalistani interns are there inside the OLO of the Conservative Party? Forget the Liberals and NDP. They're officially taken over.
Right.
I'm talking about the Conservatives. And this is, if someone who believes in small government, which I do, and I believe in these things.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's very concerning that there is a small group of people that has so much disproportionate control. And you asked me a question about Canadian media. I actually wanted to know your views on this. So Kevin Wong, good Canadian member of parliament, does a giant press conference of 46 minutes with Sam Cooper and a couple of other folks, in which 4 names are taken: one former Conservative senator, if I remember, and one Liberal senator, and 2 members of parliament from the Liberal Party that are currently inside the parliament too. One, I think, is a minister, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
right?
Cabinet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cabinet minister. And the entire press conference ends. There was one question asked after, if I remember correctly. Then they say, anybody has a question on the Zoom calls? Not even a single question is asked. After that, there is no coverage in the Canadian media landscape. There is radio silence. Should we not be worried about this?
Yeah, I think we should be very concerned about it. And the big reason why there hasn't been more talk about it is, I think, China's very involved. There is so much going on. I was just talking to one of my former co-hosts about this today, and all the issues that are happening across the country. Chinese police stations being another one of them. And we are a captured nation on very many levels. We are afraid to speak out. And Kevin Wong, who brought it forward, the reason why there wasn't much fanfare is because he's an independent, unfortunately. He doesn't have a party behind him. So no one really thinks he has much weight behind him. And they didn't really care to really check Sam Cooper's sources. They kind of just left it because it's a little too touchy at this point in time. That's my perspective and understanding why that just kind of that story went out and then flopped.
Listen, let's assume hypothetically that the Indian government was involved in whatever. They were trying to do something over here. Let's hypothetically. Do I buy it? No, I have not seen any evidence for it. But let's say hypothetically it was. The amount of we've not heard a single Indian interference MP name being dropped anywhere.
No.
But we've had 4 Chinese. But the disproportionate amount of interference that the Indian government coverage in Indian government gets in Canada, inside the parliament and outside the parliament in the media, compared to what the Chinese are getting, says a lot about this country and says a lot about the overall discourse we are going through as members of this society. And Josh, I'm really worried. If you carefully listen to the RCMP hearing, or the CSIS, former CSIS director and the current director, they going on record. What did they say? The Indians are not really interested in anything beyond Khalistanis. On the record, I'm not saying things that are not available publicly to be verified. These were all said during hearings. When asked during the hearing, the funniest bit was when the RCMP commissioner was asked, do you think Canadians could be going to India and bumping the people off over there? And at that time, the RCMP commissioner says, anything is possible. That is the funniest answer I've heard in my life. So what we're essentially saying is that RCMP has basically given up on these things. And now you actually have Khalistani cops. Today, we have a proof of concept. Yesterday, people were calling me a conspiracy theorist. Today, my theory has been proven. I have shown you a Khalistani cop.
Right.
And there are many like this. So ask yourself, how can you trust any investigation? They botched up. Are we going to deny that the Air India investigation was botched up by RCMP and CSIS together? They did botch it up.
Yeah.
I don't know for what reason, but they did botch it up. So to me, it's really concerning.
Great points. And thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge and your perspective on what's happening and what's been going on. Last question I have for you. It's a spicy one. I think it's a good wake-up call for many, though. From your experience, obviously you were very well versed in politics. Who has the better political system, Canada or India?
I think Canada has very robust political system. I think India has many flaws in some ways. I'm not saying before somebody thinks, oh, he hates India. I think India is amazing. Uh,
Mm.
People have to understand that colonialism does have its after effects, and then we chose the wrong economic path, which was socialism initially. If we would have chosen capitalism, I think India would have a lot less problems. And I think Canada has a very good political system. We need some tweaks and turns over here. Like I said, I'm sorry, guys. If you're not a Canadian passport holder, you don't get to vote in the nominations. I'm sorry. We need to stop that. We need to have uniform primary laws in this country, and that is something, Josh. I hope we start a petition to all political outfits. We should start a petition to the entire political class of Canada. I don't think immigrants like me, until and unless we don't take the passport, should have a say beyond a point in the politics of the political direction of this country. The only passport holders should decide who gets, like, let's say right now I'm eligible to vote for get a membership for the Conservative Party candidate where I am, but I think I should not do it if I don't believe in it, which is why I'm not doing it. Otherwise, I would have spent the $15. $15 is nothing, but I sincerely believe it's unethical for me to do it, which is why I have not done it. I believe it's unethical. I think these are real issues that we need to talk about. But overall, I think Canada still has a robust system. We need to talk about police reforms in Canada. I think catch and release is deeply problematic. If you are a repeat offender, where you have committed the same crime again and again and again and again, what am I supposed to do? Kumbaya with you? What am I supposed to do? Put that person in jail. I don't give a shit.
Right.
And if he's white, he's brown, he's black, I don't give a shit. He's a repeat offender. The prison industrial complex is telling you to say that. No, my safety is telling me to say that.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are common sense things, but I believe Canada still has hope. We need to change this disastrous economic policy. You cannot have an economy that 25% of the economy is real estate. This is a disastrous economy.
Yeah.
So if 25% of your economy is real estate, what are you going to get? Mass immigration. Because you need people for the houses, right? Listen, we don't have a very high fertility rate in Canada. It is like 1.2 or 1.3 for Canadian naturalized Canadians, right? So it's a serious problem. So, and two,
my second biggest worry now is because of the anti-immigrant sentiment over here. My biggest fear is we're going to throw the baby with the bathwater out.
Yeah.
We're going to be like, stop all immigration. No, you morons. Don't stop all immigration, because baby boomers are going to retire from the market, who have been the backbone of Canadian society for decades now. They're all retiring starting, I think, if I remember, from 2026. By the time we go to 2032, all baby boomers are gone. They're going to add to the pension cost. And if we don't have skilled people, no, not these nut jobs who blow up firecrackers in Young and Dundas, send them back and get the good ones from India, because Indians are the only ones having babies. So replace these, send them back, and get qualified Indians like me, so that they can come back and they can get high paid jobs and they can really pay taxes. So we need to fix in short, can we go back to the Harper days? I cannot believe Canadians voted Harper out for this joker. Shame on them.
Yep. I am at least happy to admit I wasn't one of the ones who voted for Trudeau. Because I saw through it from the get-go, even as a young guy who at that point I was 23, 22. And he just had no substance. And, yes, Harper was messing up on a couple things, but it wasn't anything where I thought he should go for it. And I was like, I'll take the devil I know versus the devil I don't. And here we are now 9 years later with whatever this guy's done. So
yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Oh, man.
I'm just glad that finally there are some people. Like, I have to give a shout out to Darshan Maharaja. He has spoken consistently against the immigration system. Listen, he's also of Indian origin. If it was not for Darshan exposing so many of these things, a lot of Canadians would not have known about it. So, half of the shit is actually because Darshan spoke about them. So I think there's still hope for this society. I would always say this because I'm someone who has traveled the world. I've been to America, Australia, you name it, I've gone there. And people always ask me, it's funny, brown people ask these funny questions. Oh, who are the nicest white folks you've met? And I've always maintained this. The nicest white folks I've met in my life are the Canadian ones. And I say this not to please because I'm in Canada. I can live anywhere in the world. I am financially sound. I can live anywhere I want to in the world. But I choose Canada because these are the nicest people I've met in my life. And I'm dead serious about it. That the nicest people and the way they're being treated is not fair. That's all I'd say.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Kushal. Really appreciate your time, your knowledge, and your enthusiasm, everything. I know our listeners appreciated it. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining us. It really means the world.
Thanks a lot, man. And I look forward to many more conversations. I'm going to call you on my podcast one of these days too. And, we'll have a crossover. And I look forward to meeting you in person one of these days.
Absolutely, dude.
I need to understand which team I support eventually.
Yeah, I'll help you out with that as best as I can. The Leafs are definitely not it. Awesome, dude. Have yourself a good one.
Thanks a lot. Take care.